What's up, everybody? Hope everyone's having a great day today. It's early for me, but you're probably going to be watching this late at night, depending on where you are, I guess. And I hope you've had a wonderful day. And a lot of you sent me this, which is a common theme these days. And when something pops off in the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case, or saga, I guess, at this point, since the case is over. And after the Netflix series aired, and we talked about our reactions and what we thought about it, there was some discussion on Twitter. And of course, when Camille Vasquez, Johnny Depp's lawyer, reacts to something, usually we'll talk about it on here. I can't wait to hear what she has to say about this Netflix series. I have not watched the interview myself, but a bunch of you sent it to me, including Azam. So thank you, everyone that sent this to me. Hit that like button if you at all are interested in this Johnny Depp and Amber Heard case. Hit that like button to let me know. And in the comments, let me know if you watched the Netflix series and what you thought about it. I think a lot of people thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was as far as whose side they chose. I won't do any spoilers here. But I do think it had some interesting aspects to it. And I like how much they highlighted YouTube and TikTok and how big it was during the trial. Now, I know they probably don't see it the same way I do. They don't see as much benefit as it gave and transparency with the justice system, civil and criminal, and how that has continued after the trial. That's one of the benefits I have seen from it. People have always jumped to conclusions. People have always convicted people guilty until proven innocent. Like there's songs about that. A lot of people felt that way anyway. So I don't think that that's a new thing with today's day and age of people actually talking about these cases publicly and in the open. And I think a lot of people, especially people with experience in the criminal justice process, can add a lot of benefit to that. That's what we try to do on this channel, obviously. And I hope that's what you all in the chat do when you're here and watching on other channels. So let's jump into this interview now and see what Camille Vasquez really thinks about this Netflix show.
No idea that there was this media social storm brewing outside.
Can you please tell the jury why you're here today?
Ms. Heard accused me of abuse.
My ex-husband is suing me.
Brutal, cruel,
This is humiliating for any human being to go through.
and all false.
Camille, Depp versus Heard. What was it like for you to go back and relive that trial via the docuseries?
It was fascinating. I mean, just to see the way that Emma put together that docuseries, I found it really interesting. She utilized the court testimony in a way that told a really compelling, truthful account of what took place inside those four walls in Virginia.
And, you know, there was what was taking place with.
So she felt like they took the testimony and put together a truthful account. That's good, right? I think a lot of people thought this was going to be just a straight hit piece on Johnny Depp, or maybe they thought it was going to be a straight hit piece on Amber Heard, and I didn't feel like it was that. I feel like they tried to be balanced. I know some people don't like some of the people they interviewed and some of the comments that they got, but I feel like they didn't necessarily twist it horribly to make it seem a certain way. I think they completely missed on why certain evidence didn't come in, which was what we broke down on the last video, and where we talked about some sidebars and specifically why certain evidence didn't come in, why it never comes in, and why the judge didn't let it in this case. But again, I don't think it was like a total hit piece or anything like that, but you guys let me know in the comments what you think.
Within those four walls. And then there was the world outside. There was the social media firestorm. What was it like for you really being at the center of that?
You know, it's interesting, and that's a great question, because while we were there inside doing our jobs, we didn't really understand the impact this case was having on social media all over the world.
Yeah.
You know, towards the end, we started getting messages or people.
I was going to say, they had to know it was something, but there's almost no way to realize quite how big it was if you're in the moment working, living in that courtroom like they were for so many weeks.
Sending us things, but really for the most part, we had no idea that there was this media social storm brewing outside.
I don't think I've seen anybody do a better job. So go Camille Vasquez.
So you were unaware that there were essentially millions of people talking about you every day online.
We really were unaware, and it was, I'm grateful that we weren't aware at the time, because we did have a job to do, and we were so incredibly busy during that time that we didn't have the time to focus on what was happening outside of our war rooms.
Anybody that thinks that this is just blowing smoke and not actually true if you've tried a case or if you've been involved in a trial as a client or a witness or whatever, you see the work that goes into it when it's a multi-week trial. I mean, we've heard it with interviews from these lawyers, from lawyers in the Murdoch case and other extended trials, and we'll continue to hear about it. You eat, sleep, breathe, and live this trial. So regardless of how big it was on social media, you may have heard certain things, you may have got text messages, but you're so involved in this and your head is so buried in this that you would never understand the extent as how big this trial got in the media.
And that courtroom. It was an act of profound cruelty, not just to Mr. Depp, but to true survivors of domestic abuse. For Ms. Heard to hold herself out as a public figure representing domestic abuse. It was false, it was defamatory, and it caused irreparable harm.
What was it like for you watching yourself in court?
What I see is actually somebody that has always believed in her client and a true advocate. I see my expressions to the evidence that's coming forward, and I very much knew the case very, very well. I knew the evidence, and I was advocating at all times for my client.
Was there one key moment when you knew that you'd won the jury over?
I don't think that we could ever be 100% sure, but there were some key moments during the trial. Johnny Depp's testimony, I think, was a key moment when he was.
So it's kind of turned into just an interview about the trial, about how she felt watching herself, about what happened in the trial, and it's kind of veered away from how she feels about the Netflix docuseries, but maybe they'll get back into it.
Finally, after 6 years, able to tell his side of the story.
I felt the responsibility of clearing the record as the only way that I could get to the point where I could speak has really taken this full 6 years. And it's been 6 years of trying times.
For 6 years, what we had were what we say unfounded allegations made by his ex-wife, Amber Heard, against him, and no response, public or otherwise, from Johnny Depp until he filed this lawsuit. And he was able to testify there 6 years later.
So it's interesting that she says that there was no response from Johnny Depp until they filed this lawsuit. The UK stuff does exist, and it is part of the process. And I think that's important for those of you that will point that out in the comments, and that's true. So there were some rumblings of responses, but specifically for Johnny to take the stand and tell his story, this was the first chance.
I also think that her cross-examination, which I had the honor of doing on behalf of Mr. Depp, was a pivotal.
I had the honor of cross-examining somebody. I haven't heard a lot of that. I had the honor of cross-examining somebody. She said on behalf of Mr. Depp, and cross-examine her she did. That's for sure.
Moment.
Okay.
Being able to confront her with her own words was so important to Mr. Depp and to our overall strategy.
So we always say, get people with their own words. It's the most powerful way.
Sitting here today, you have not donated the $7 million, donated, not pledged, donated the $7 million divorce settlement to charity.
I use pledge and donation synonymous with one another. They
But
do
I
the same
don't.
thing.
Ms. Heard, I don't use it synonymously.
That's how donations are paid.
Ms. Heard, respectfully, that's not my question.
Pledge versus donate. What's the difference? Explain that.
And so now that was in the Netflix show. So now they're pulling kind of parts from the Netflix show, asking her about them specifically. So there's more crossover with Netflix as they're talking about the trial. I assumed this was going to be more about, have you gotten backlash from Netflix? Have you gotten more support since the Netflix thing came out? How did you feel about the editing? How did you feel about what they said didn't come into evidence? Maybe some of those questions are still coming in the future, but right now they are using kind of clips from the Netflix show to ask her about specific parts that were shown there and what she thought and what she was feeling and what she was going through.
Us, please. And also, do you feel that was a pretty important moment?
I think it was a key moment and something that the docuseries highlighted. I think that while donations are usually pledged at the beginning and then the payment is made after, they are not used synonymously.
And so now she goes through, again, seems like her take on it, which is what we're reacting to and kind of looking at as positive, because she's saying some of the pivotal moments in her mind were some of the things that were highlighted in the Netflix show.
As Ms. Heard tried to say. And the real issue that we had in this case was that for 6 years, Ms. Heard had implied and told the world and used the word donated versus pledged, that she had donated and implied that she had paid the $7 million to charity. And when confronted with it, she tried to back out of that statement. And the truth was, she had testified under oath and had publicly said she had donated the money, implying she had paid it, when in fact she hadn't paid anywhere near $7 million.
This is what Amber carried in her purse for the entire relationship with Johnny Depp. This was what she used. She became very adept at it. You're going to hear the testimony from Amber about how she had to mix the different colors for the different days of the bruises as they developed in the different coloring, and how she would use these to touch those up to be able to cover those.
One unexpected big talking point in all of this was the Milani makeup palette, right? Amber acknowledged that there was this palette. She said that this was what she used during the.
So because the Netflix series was obviously parts and highlights of the trial, she's more, again, just reacting to the trial more than she is the Netflix series, right? And I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I was expecting a different interview, I guess. I don't know if you all were. We've heard a lot of these things from Camille Vasquez already. We'll listen to him again and how she explains, like, even sometime later now, how some of these talking points that came up and that Netflix highlighted what she was thinking at the time. So I guess that's what it's going to be more of, just so everybody can be thinking about it in the right context. I was expecting something a little different.
Time of their relationship. How did you originally find out that makeup palette was in fact not even on the market when Johnny and Amber were still together?
It's a fascinating story. Milani actually came forward and said that they didn't make this exact palette until many years after Amber and Johnny were together. So it's something that spread on social media like a firestorm. And while we definitely learned about it and couldn't help but notice that video came out and Milani went on record saying that this palette didn't exist, we didn't feel that it was relevant or admissible evidence that we could bring forward. So that's why we didn't raise it during the trial.
Do you find that Mr. Depp has proven all the elements of defamation? Answer, yes.
Now, when you look back sort of holistically at this entire process, is there anything you would have done differently? How do you feel about how everything played out from your end?
No, I think we did the best job we could for our client. We were over-prepared for this case, and we believed in him, and we believed in his innocence, and we were determined to show that, not just to the jury, but to the public.
We talked a little bit about the social media firestorm. There was a lot of venom directed at Amber during this trial. Why do you think that was?
Well, in response to that, I always say that social media and the world was really reacting to the evidence that was being presented in that courtroom. And so I think that the reaction was the barometer for the court of public opinion.
So that's an interesting comment. And that actually is about the Netflix series now. So she's saying, and again, a big part of this docuseries was TikTok and YouTube and bloggers or vloggers or whatever, and how they reacted and the vitriol to Amber Heard and how that was unfair. But Camille Vasquez is like, listen, I think they were reacting to the evidence. And if you listen to opening statements or closing arguments in this case, the lawyers reacted to the evidence with similar vitriol. How horrible this was. How this was a lie. How she did this to hurt Johnny Depp. So they kind of felt the same way. Now, they did it in a respectful and professional way in court, on TikTok and other places, and maybe it wasn't so respectful or professional. But again, she's saying we, the lawyers, the witnesses, the jury even, and the court of public opinion reacted to the evidence in this case, and the evidence was so bad for Amber Heard that probably had something to do with the backlash.
The court of public opinion was saying, we don't find her credible. We're not believing these allegations. Even though I think that there was a real desire to believe her, to believe the woman, which...
And honestly, if you listen to a lot of the podcasts and YouTubers and TikTokers at the beginning of the case or before, that was the sentiment. People don't want to believe that or listen to that now, but that was the sentiment. Most people initially believed Amber Heard before this case started. And I I didn't necessarily know who I believed as far as statements go, but I definitely thought Amber Heard was going to win. I definitely thought Amber Heard was going to win at the beginning of the trial.
Is often
And you can fact check that.
case. But I think we were able to establish and show that people shouldn't be guilty by accusation.
Now, so many people followed this trial in real time. And now we've got this docuseries. Time has passed. The dust has settled somewhat, arguably. What do you hope that people, or expect that people might take away from this docuseries, from what you've seen?
From what I've seen, I think, and I hope that people take away the fact that the social media firestorm that took place was reacting to the evidence that was happening in real time during that trial. And that's what...
And I'll just finish, I think, her thought, which again is not fair, but that's the point of doing this reaction, right? So this was people reacting to the evidence and the truth of what happened, not picking which celebrity they like better, not picking the man, not picking the person that was more powerful, not picking the person with more money, but instead looking at the facts, looking at the evidence that was admissible and reliable and real and authenticated that came in at trial. That's what they were doing, reacting to that. Not a mountain of so-called evidence that was not reliable, not a mountain of text messages that were hearsay, not things that people may have written to help themselves, right? All things we talked about in the last video and how they were kept out for different evidentiary reasons. Things were not hidden to create this social media response, but instead the truth was revealed, and that's what they were responding to. I think if we could get inside her head and get the full expanded answer, it would probably sound something like that.
The public was reacting to. It was real evidence, admissible evidence that was taking place in those four walls in that courtroom.
So there you go. She even added a little bit more there at the end. So yeah, I mean, another great interview. I think a great response to be respectful to the Netflix documentary, even give it some positive feedback. But most importantly, saying all of that outside noise was a response to the truth. And that's why people were on Johnny's side and against Amber generally. And that's what the docuseries really highlighted, the millions and millions or billions of hashtag justice for Johnny versus the lower level of millions of hashtag justice for Amber. And so I think that was interesting. She's not saying that social media or any of that noise had a negative effect on the case or even had any effect on the jury at all. That question wasn't specifically asked. I would be interested. I mean, we already know her answer. She said, no, she doesn't think it affected the outcome, but did it have a negative effect on the trial? I think we already know her answer to that too, would be no. Let me know what you thought. Let me know if you learned anything new during this interview with Camille Vasquez versus all the interviews we have watched and reacted to in the past. Thanks for joining me. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Hit that like button on the way out, and we'll be with you again soon. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok at Tragos Law is our handle. And don't forget to listen to The Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. If you have a case you want to talk to us about, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.